They called it the Silent Deep, a name passed in whispers among mariners who had learned the hard way that not all seas speak, off the southern curve of the Atlantic Ocean far from ports. Shipping lanes and flight paths, there lies a stretch of water where no signal travels. No radio chirps, and where the sky seems just a little heavier above the waves. To the untrained eye, it's just ocean. Blue, endless, indifferent, but those who have been there and returned fewer than you'd think describe something altogether different. Not a place of peace, but a vacuum of meaning. A place where thought seems to echo inward, and no one, no matter how loud they scream, can find the surface again. In 1938, the German vessel Valkyrie II departed from Lisbon under the guise of a meteorological expedition. Its real purpose, hidden in the margins of state-funded naval papers, was more esoteric. And the sky always vast, always comforting to seem, and seemed wrong. Not cloudy, not storming, just heavy, Adler wrote. The stars are here, but they feel farther away. The Third Reich, obsessed with occult science, had begun to investigate global anomalies, places where the known world thinned, where natural laws seemed to hiccup. The South Atlantic Anomaly, a strange magnetic disturbance recorded by early geomagnetic instruments, had caught their interest. They wanted to know why signals vanished there. They were in open water, with nothing but miles of sea beneath. He insisted it wasn't imagined. When officers opened the crawl space beneath his quarters, they found seawater pooled in a perfectly circular shape. No more humming from the generators. The Valkyrie became a ghost upon the water, floating, breathing, waiting. No leak, no hole. Just water where it should not be. Something is wrong with the ocean, he told them. I don't know what it is, but it hears us. The clocks turn, but I don't feel hours pass. Sometimes it's night and noon at once. The sea glows beneath us like a heartbeat. Then Adler noted a tension like something building just beyond the hull, in the water or beneath it. Dolphins swam beside them for days, and then vanished all at once. Adler himself admitted he lost 20 hours staring at the ship's brass compass, even though it pointed nowhere. The ship's cat refused to go near the starboard railing. Technicians began reporting phantom tones through the headphone's soft clicks. Inverted rhythms, pulses that didn't register on any waveband. A low crackle filled the room, followed by a voice not German. Not human. It spoke in bursts, not words. But everyone on the bridge that night claimed they understood it in their own way. Why, compasses stuttered. Why, birds changed flight paths midair, only to dive into the sea as if seeking silence. Captain Friedrich Adler was a man caught between war and wonder, shared dreams. Of corridors with no doors, of endless metal staircases, of a sea that extended inward, not outward, sea inside the self, echoing memories they hadn't lived. One man woke screaming in Russian, though he'd never learned the language. Another drew a symbolist spiral fractured by static lines and hung himself before he could explain what it meant. A career naval officer, disillusioned by the rising mania of his homeland, he had accepted the Valkyrie commission with ulterior motives. He wanted to disappear, not from duty, but from noise. His journals, sealed in a salt-warped box recovered from the Valkyrie's wreck, years later speak not of politics, but of pressure. Pressure in the ears. Pressure behind the eyes. Pressure in the soul. We are headed, he wrote on day one, into a hush too perfect to be accidental. The first week passed unremarkably. 23 men, clear skies, radios chirping hourly back to Berlin. On the 9th day, the radios went silent, not broken, not jammed. Just ... gone. Every channel turned to white nothing. The ship's internal signals still worked, but no external contact could be made. Then came the first incident. Hans Bremer, a young sonar technician, reported hearing a knocking 3 slow raps, then silence beneath his cabin floor. By morning, Hans was gone. His boots were found outside the mess hall, neatly placed, dry, no signs of struggle, no splash, only the stillness. Adler gathered the men and spoke plainly. He ordered radio silence. All sound systems turned off. No more sonar. No more Morse. But silence, they learned, has its own language. Over the next days, men began to report dreams. The journal entries turned more desperate. time here is elastic, Adler wrote. And then, for 3 full days, no one moved. Not in rebellion, not in fear, but in surrender. They simply sat, slept, drank water, stared at the horizon. Something in the air stole the will to act. On the evening of the 3rd day, someone restarted the radio. They don't know who. The dial turned itself slowly. One man wept. Another tried to jump overboard again. Adler simply wrote, "It doesn't want us to speak. It wants us to remember." The next morning, the voice was gone. But something had changed. The ocean flat for days began to breathe. Not with waves, not in the way water should, but with a rise and fall that was far too regular, like the chest of a sleeping creature. As though the ship floated not on water, but on the slow tidal respiration of something vast beneath. And the silence it grew deeper, more complete. Sound began to decay. A dropped wrench no longer rang on the metal deck. Footsteps felt absorbed into the wood. Conversations hung in the air like thoughts never quite spoken. The stiff, ordered handwriting became looser, curved, more contemplative. "We are the disturbance," he wrote. "This sea was not meant to hear us. We have pressed too deep into a chamber meant for echoes alone." The Valkyrie was not simply mute, had entered a new form of quiet. Something ancient, something sacred. The crew began to avoid speaking entirely. Some wrote notes, others stared blankly, as though fearing their voices might wake something. A few of them began carving symbols into the wood of the ship. Others tore pages from the ship's Bible and folded them into birds. Captain Adler's journal shifted in tone. Like sound was being stored, gathered, condensed for something still to come. It was on the 15th night that the fog arrived, not the kind that drifts in from the horizon, but one that rose from the sea itself, coiling over the whole like smoke from unseen fire. But it is not made of notes. It is made of memory. My mother's death, and the taste of blood on snow. A bell that never rings, but always echoes. It smelled not of salt, but of iron and ink, and it carried whispers not heard through ears, but felt along the spine, as if the sea below had wrapped its calm, wet hand around the hull and refused to let go. The stars vanished. The fog thickened. An echo, now seated cross-legged at the bow, began to hum. He claimed it was not in the water, but beneath time itself, and that their ship had drifted into its shadow. Some said they heard names. Others claimed memories deep. Private memories rose up from the mist and wrapped around them like fingers, toneless, vibrating through steel and thought alike. It turned dreams to ash. It broke prayers into syllables, and it never stopped. And then they found the boy. A child no older than 12, standing barefoot on the aft deck. No one had seen him come aboard. No boats nearby. No missing persons from any recent port. He said nothing. A phrase repeated. A breath held by something older than God. We have made noise in a place that was never meant to hear. Just the ripples afterward, disappearing faster than waves should. Chilling in its clarity, fed him. He neither ate nor slept. His pulse beat slower than normal 20 beats per minute, cold to the touch, but alive. The crew began calling him Echo, did nothing. He simply stared out at the water, unmoving, as if waiting for someone or something to call him back. Adler tried speaking to him, but the boy only blinked once and placed a finger to his lips. Silence. They dressed him. Men began to dream of him sitting at the edge of their bunks, whispering things that could not be remembered upon waking, but left their hands shaking. And always, that crushing stillness pressed in. Adler recorded the final entries of some of the men. Jorgensen, the mechanic, wrote, "There is music under the ship." Lieutenant Kessler, before going mad, drew a map of the region with no land, only a perfect circle of void labeled. School der Still, the pillar of silence. Then Echo spoke, not in words, not with his mouth. But every man aboard heard him inside their own voice. You have reached the breath between thoughts. That night, 2 crew members jumped into the sea without screaming. No splash, no sound. Adler ordered the ship turn north. Anywhere. Anywhere but here. But the compass spun. The engine, still functional, would not move the vessel. It was the only sound left. Lo, Adler's final legible entry. This ocean was not meant to be crossed. It is a pause in creation. Then the journal goes silent. Blank pages follow, dozens, until the very last one. It is stained, salt-warped, and on it, in black ink, far darker than the rest, are 4 words, written in a child's uneven hand. It is listening now. The Valkyrie did not sink. It dissolved. Days ceased to follow one another in order. The sun still rose, but not always after night. The wood no longer creaked, but sang, softly, in harmony with him. He believed they had crossed into a borderless space, the breath between moments, where thought becomes form and memory becomes gravity. Instruments turned warm to the touch. Brass darkened. The compass began to bleed. He began hearing the crew speaking to him before they opened their mouths. Then he heard them after they stopped. A fine rust-like powder pooled under its base, staining the floor red. Shadows moved as if by separate will, elongating, sometimes pausing entirely while their owners moved on. Men whispered that time had frayed that. They were now floating on a thread unraveling from the hem of something beyond understanding. Another claimed he saw a second ship drifting alongside the Valkyrie's spectral twin, crewed by duplicates of themselves, frozen in place with mouths open in silent warning. The last began building a shrine in the engine room using torn pages from the navigation charts, arranging them into a spiral around the heart of the ship. The dates shifted, visions cast like northern lights above the sea, the face of a long-lost lover, the scent of coal smoke, the weight of a forgotten sorrow. The fog pulsed in rhythm with it all, wrapping the ship in something that felt less like mist and more like breath. Some letters had become unrecognizable. Others were mirror images. Echo remained at the bow, silent, watching. His hum deepened, not louder, but denser, a frequency you could feel in your lungs. And it was changing the ship. Captain Adler withdrew. His writings became meditations, more poetry than log. He no longer feared what was happening. He called it the undoing of noise. It spoke not in words but in corrections. It altered memory. Small things at first, the name of a mother, the color of the captain's coat, the taste of bread. Then larger things, who had died, who was still aboard, what their mission had been. They had been inverted, drowned upward into a place where meaning unraveled. Where the surface was below, and silence was a current that pulled at the soul. He stopped commanding, stopped sleeping. He sat at his desk for hours with his journal open, though the pen no longer touched paper. Then he heard no one at all. By now, only 6 men remained aboard. 3 refused to speak. One stared into a broken mirror and murmured to his reflection in an unknown tongue. His voice was wrong, both young and old, distant and intimate. And then the whispering returned. You could still see them, but they weren't entirely there. Another took apart the ship's radio piece by piece, only to find letters instead of wires, black, ink-like characters curled within the circuits, bleeding onto his hands. Sound no longer behaved. Words formed backwards. The human voice, when spoken aloud, became blurred, as though censored by the air itself. Our thoughts no longer anchored a bone. See my reflection blinking before I do. The sea, ... is remembering what it was before language. We're the echo that does not belong. No longer from the mist, but from inside the metal, from beneath the nails in the wood, from the reflection in the water. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Found adrift. No bodies, no crew, only air too quiet. Instruments failed, compass neutral, radio silent. Child's shoes found on deck dry. His lips moved, his throat strained, but nothing emerged. Nothing at all. The others watched, unmoving, as if he were underwater. One man, Otto, tried to keep track, writing names, dates, events in charcoal on the walls of the ship, but each morning the words rearranged themselves. Adler described a night in which he watched the sky flickered not with lightning, but with memory. On that same night, Echo finally moved. Now you must learn the weight of silence. He stood up, walked to the center of the deck, and pointed downward. There was nothing below but black water, but every man understood. The sea was not beneath them, it was above. They were no longer afloat on an ocean in the South Atlantic. The next day, the Valkyrie began to fracture. Not break apart, not splinter, but unthread. The hull lost mass. Railings faded at the edges. Parts of the ship no longer cast shadows. Two men walked overboard, stepping down as if onto invisible stairs, descending into nothingness with calm smiles. Adler tried to stop them. He begged, he prayed, but the sea did not answer, only echo. He stood beneath the tattered flag of the Valkyrie, and finally spoke with his mouth. He said, "You have spoken too long." The captain fell to his knees. The last entry in the journal reads, "We are becoming less. The edges of us blur." Below that, a symbol, a spiral made of 6 concentric lines, each broken at a different angle. Beneath it, scrawled almost illegibly, "There is no silence, only listening." Then, the pages go blank, except for one, near the back. It's written in new, precise handwriting. It says recovered 1956. The official report filed by the Brazilian Navy in 1956 was brief. A derelict vessel had been found adrift 200 nautical miles west of Tristan da Cunha, identified by faded lettering on the hull as Valkyrie II. Its registry predated modern archives. No distress signals, no signs of life, no visible damage. No weather records indicating a storm. Not an absence of noise, but a repulsion of it. Breathing became unnatural. Footsteps produced nothing. Voices felt swallowed. Even the ocean around the ship had gone quiet, as if the sea held its breath, and no sound. Divers reported that stepping aboard was like entering a vacuum.
Ow.
They found a single object of note. Eventually, it was locked away. One of the divers, now an old man, described it later in an interview that was never aired. Child's shoes, dry-laced, sitting beside the helm. For years, the report was filed under maritime curiosities, unresolved. It was like the ship had remembered too much. It's like it had become full. It was trying to forget again. The satellite lost all internal telemetry. When contact resumed, its orientation had shifted 0.04 degrees without any recorded input. But stories don't forget. In 1979, a Soviet satellite passing over the South Atlantic Anomaly recorded an interference event, perfect dead zone. 63 seconds of total radio blackout. One officer gouged out his eardrums with a fork. The ship's captain resigned and entered a monastery in Crimea. The logs were classified. The only image captured during that interval showed an impossible shadow on the ocean surface. Not a ship, not a storm. Planes lost contact for minutes. Submarines emerged off course. It's always the same conditions. Something circular. Something that seemed to ripple not on the water but beneath it. Shortly after, a Soviet marine research vessel, Vostok 7, was deployed to investigate. It returned 3 weeks later. The crew refused to speak, but fragments leaked. In one decrypted transmission, later smuggled to a journalist in Vienna, the phrase appeared, "The child is laughing." No one knew what it meant. But across the next 2 decades, similar anomalies occurred brief. Perfect silences that rolled across isolated parts of the sea like a windless plague. No signal, no static, just nothing. Then in 2003, during a private deep-sea dive expedition led by an ex-NASA engineer named Lyle Whitaker, a strange sonar return was recorded 3,900 meters beneath the South Atlantic. A structure. Not natural, not tectonic, perfectly circular. 72 meters wide, with 6 concentric rings. The divers attempted a second descent. They never returned. But their last message, garbled though it was, contained a single repeated phrase. "It's not under the ocean. The ocean is under it." Whitaker vanished shortly after. His personal journals were auctioned posthumously. In them, among technical notes and calculations, was a single page torn from an older, log-weathered, and salt-stained. It bore a name. Friedrich Adler, a sketch of the Valkyrie II, and a child's drawing. A boy at the helm of a ship humming. Below it in handwriting not Whitaker's the words, "You cannot map silence, it maps you." So what was the silent deep? A magnetic anomaly? A myth born from wartime paranoia? Or a point of rupture in the fabric of reality, a wound where memory pools and meaning collapses? There is no answer. Only recordings that cut out. Only compasses that lose their will. Only ships found with no names, no voices, and the faint impression on wood or steel of a child's bare feet. They say the ocean is vast, but perhaps not all of it belongs to us. Perhaps some waters were never meant to be crossed. Not because of distance, but because they do not wish to be known. They only wish to listen. And when they've heard too much, they remember. So if ever you sail near the South Atlantic and your radio fails, your watch stops. And the water grows still. Don't speak. Don't listen. And whatever you do, don't answer the hum.